Hello and welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us for the Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults. It's my pleasure to turn the mic over to our facilitator for this webinar, Ms. Tawny Wilson.
Thank you, Steph. I sure appreciate your help today. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults webinar, where we will talk about the newly developed curriculum designed to help Indigenous communities establish and sustain financial education programs tailored for our youth 14 to 20 years of age to help build their financial literacy foundation. Across Indian country, our youth are taking a stand, and some Indigenous leaders call this generation the seventh generation, which speaks of a time thought to be 7 generations after first contact with Europeans, when Indigenous youth and allies from all races come together to enact a new age of healing and rebirth for Native people and Turtle Island, the name many Indigenous people call the United States of America. Being Lakota, I'd like to share a quote of the Lakota leader Crazy Horse, who spoke of his vision of the 7th generation prophecy with the following words: "Upon suffering beyond suffering, the Red Nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things, and the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom." We are so grateful and honored to be a part of this movement in such a small way, and to be raising and growing with our 7th generation youth. So again, thank you all for joining our webinar today to learn all about OESTA's new financial empowerment curriculum designed for Native youth that focuses on financial literacy. Let's get started. Okay. My name is Tawny Wilson, and I will be facilitating this webinar today. I did mention I am Lakota, Sicangu and Ogallala Lakota. I am enrolled in the Sicangu Nation. I have the wonderful Miss Stephanie Cote on the line as well. She is of Ottawa and Potawatomi background. She's basically working her magic behind the scenes. If you all know Stephanie, that's where she loves to tend to work and do her magic. I always like to say if Team OESTA were the Wizard of Oz, Steph would be our wizard working behind the curtain, making sure we stay on the yellow brick road. We both work here as programs officers and are very grateful to have you all be the most vital part of this webinar today. Without you, our change makers interested in this curriculum and bringing it to your communities, we wouldn't be able to make a change and move the needle like we are anticipating. We would like to thank our curriculum sponsors today. The Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults was developed by First Nations Development Institute, partnered with us here at OESTA, as well as the the Freddie Mac Foundation. In fact, if it wasn't for the Freddie Mac Foundation, we would not be in this space today, as they so graciously funded this curriculum, and we couldn't be more grateful for them. We piloted this curriculum in Gallup, New Mexico with the Gallup students and received valuable and in-depth feedback. We also conducted our first national training in Denver, Colorado on November 13th through the 15th, and are happy to announce that we have our first 34 certified trainers from all across Indian country who can now deliver and train this youth curriculum in their local communities. Please note that we will be conducting another national Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults, Train the Trainer, on March 3rd through the 5th in Boulder, Colorado. More to come on that. Again, we would like to acknowledge our wonderful funders and webinar partners who are on the call today. We have Ms. Maheen Qureshi and Carla Thompson from the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, or more commonly known as Freddie Mac. They are a government-sponsored entity, And Freddie Mac is a part of the Duty to Serve initiative to help families with very low to low and moderate income that continue to face barriers achieving home ownership. We're going to turn it over to Maheen to briefly talk about this initiative and the importance of financial education to Freddie Mac. Welcome, Maheen.
Thank you so much, Tawny. Just a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you, Tawny and Steph. It's great to be here. As I was just introduced, my name is Maheen and I'm with Freddie Mac. And in our corporation, we have the single family division. And I and my colleague Carla Thompson, who you'll hear from a little bit later in today's webinar, we are in the affordable lending and access to credit area of Freddie Mac. And we've definitely been very involved in the Duty to Serve initiative that Tawny just mentioned. And we have just completed or are about to the second year of the Duty to Serve initiative with the 3-year plan that's in place. And Carla is more of an expert in this. She actually manages the rural market segment of Duty to Serve on the single family side of the business. And I am in the same area as her, and I work in housing outreach. So my team collaborates with nonprofit organizations and CDFIs. And so it was really great a couple of years ago when I got to know Crystal Langholz and later Tawny, when Tawny joined the team. And we, I think, initially had met through probably the Center for Indian Country Development and the working group that we were on around homebuyer readiness, and started to talk about, this exciting Duty to Serve initiative where we have to serve 3 underserved markets in the country, including manufactured housing, as well as affordable housing preservation, which includes energy efficiency, community land trusts, and shared equity. And then the third leg of the Duty to Serve stool is the rural markets, as I mentioned. And within the rural markets, Indian country is a really big focus. So as I got to know some of the organizations in Indian country, and then Crystal and I were talking, she shared that it was a long time dream of Native communities and leaders and First Nations Awista to have a youth financial capability curriculum for Native youth. And that really resonated with Freddie Mac. We loved the idea of possibly being able to support that and make that dream a reality. So it's super exciting today that Awista and all of you are launching this together in the community. And I was just fortunate to be a part of the advisory board that Awista had created to very quickly and diligently work on this project where they were able to adapt their Building Native Communities Financial Skills for Families curriculum, but for Native youth this time. So I was fortunate to be a part of that effort, and I saw how passionate and how expert everybody on the advisory board was. And so it really came together so nicely, and we were just really happy to be able to support that. So I will stop at that, and as I said, later on we'll hear from Carla Thompson, my colleague, and she'll be able to speak a little bit more about some of the mortgage and other products that we have that may be of interest, which Freddie Mac has kind of put out to the market, and especially to the rural markets recently. Thank you, Tawny.
Thank you, Maheen. Absolutely, we have been so blessed to be working with Freddie Mac during this process. And if it wasn't for our amazing advisory team of Native practitioners and leaders across the country, this curriculum would not exist. So we just want to quickly thank Mr. Arnold Blum out of Gallup Central High School, Crystal Langholz, of course, here at First Nations Awista, Sean Spruce, financial education consultant. Of course, Maheen was part of that advisory team with Freddie Mac, Jonelle Yearout with Nimipu Community Development Fund, Miranda Lente with Tiwa Lending Services, Ben Marks and Jackie Franke with First Nations Development Institute, Vicki Oldman with Seven Sisters Community Development Corporation, and Sonia Samuels with the Nez Perce Tribal Housing Authority. Again, a special thanks to them for being a part of this curriculum and really advising us and guiding us down this financial road that we've paved out for us. All right, so just a few quick Zoom reminders and courtesies as we move along this webinar today. Of course, we ask that you please be present and engaged, and we're definitely doing our best to keep you engaged. You will all be automatically muted on the webinar just to help eliminate any background noise and elevator or hold music for those of you multitaskers out there who like to travel by elevator during webinars and or take on multiple phone calls. I know I'm guilty of that on many occasions. If you have any questions or comments, please type those into the chat box or raise your virtual hand if you'd like to be unmuted. Of course, you could raise your physical hand, but we won't be able to see that on this end. So you have the tools there. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Just a quick practice, guys. Please raise your virtual hand and lower it if you can, if you're able to do that. Okay, yeah, it looks like a few of you are. Very good. Hi, everybody. Good to see you out there. Okay, let's see here. Now that we've practiced a bit, we'd like to know who is on the webinar today. What organizations are we representing out there? If you could type into your chat box who you are and who you're representing, we would greatly appreciate that. I'm just trying to make this a little bit interactive. And again, welcome and thank you all. Okay. Yeah, we've got quite a few people on this webinar, and this just goes to show how important and needed this curriculum is and the excitement in Indian country about this curriculum and tools. Oh gosh, we've got quite a few folks on the line and it still keeps ticking up. Thank you so much. We see you guys. We appreciate all of you. All right, just a quick webinar session overview. Today we'll just talk briefly about OWISTA, who we are, our mission and strategy to accomplish our mission, all about then building Native communities, financial empowerment for teens and young adults. Curriculum, we'll take a deep dive into each lesson and the 2 supplemental resources, which are college readiness and student loans, as well as the per capita payments. And at the conclusion of the webinar, we'll take a moment to answer any questions that you may have. So who is First Nations OWISTA? No doubt that many of you have worked with us before, or at least have heard of us, but for those of you that haven't, we are a national Native CDFI intermediary offering financial products and services, development services exclusively to Native CDFIs and nonprofits, tribally designated housing authorities, tribal communities and departments, Native nonprofits, and tribal communities, our tribal colleges and universities. Okay, what we do here, we provide national and regional trainings all across Indian country, and we can and will work with all 573 federally recognized tribes. We provide customized technical assistance, lending and capitalization, whether that be through capital loans, agricultural loans, and or first-in loans. We do research and policy advocacy to help Native communities develop an integrated range of asset-building products and services, including financial education and financial products. We believe that when armed with the appropriate resources, Native peoples hold the capacity and ingenuity to ensure the sustainable, economic, spiritual, and cultural well-being of our own communities. To accomplish these goals, we do that through our mission here at OWISTA, which is to provide opportunities for Native people to develop financial assets and create wealth by assisting in the establishment of strong, permanent institutions and programs, contributing to economic independence and strengthening sovereignty for all Native communities. Asset building tools stimulate reservation economies by providing our tribal members the opportunity to acquire financial management skills and build and accumulate assets through small business creation, home ownership, education, and so much more. There are 73 certified Native CDFIs, and a CDFI is a community development financial institution across the country, and 49 Native CDFI network members. We are growing and continue to grow, and for that we're very excited and grateful. Okay, and again, our clients that we work with are going to be Native CDFIs, tribes, tribal departments, Native controlled nonprofits, tribally designated housing entities, and then tribal colleges and universities. All right, guys, quick pop quiz out. We have a question for you. We're going to pose this question to you. So go ahead and answer through your chat box, okay? Question, financial education for the youth is vital in Indian country today because A, predatory lenders are increasingly targeting our reservations and communities. B, culture influences attitudes towards wealth. Youth pick up surrounding money habits. C, the youth need money management skills before they manage their own money. D, some youth may face unique challenges when receiving their per cap and/or lump sum distributions. Or E, all of the above. Go ahead and type that in the chat box if you choose to. Yep, you are correct. All of you are coming through with an E, all of the above. Many reasons why financial education is so important in Indian country today. So when we talk about how adolescents learn, a young adolescent brain, we know, can hold 7 items of information, plus or minus a few items in working memory at one time. So the brain, it's social and requires interaction in order to develop properly. So we believe that practice and rehearsal is critical to learning for the long term. And we take in more information visually than through any other sense when we are in our youth. We talk about the principles of learning, and we understand that this is how adolescents learn, and we try to embed that into the curriculum. Through the principles of learning, sometimes abstract thinking can be difficult. Concepts need to be explained socially. And again, we talked about the short-term memory stores are limited, and our attention spans can be short. We do know that youth learn through concrete experiences. So when teaching concepts, it's helpful to directly relate it to an activity. So a good example is using play money. Maybe if you're doing some experiential learning and you want to illustrate income and expenses, it's good to work with play money, something physical, tangible that they can feel, hold, and work with. Again, we do know that the adolescent working memory holds up to 7 items. So if you break up the teachings, what we've learned, you give them time to apply it, they're able to hold or store that information a little better. Using emotion in your lessons, the addition of emotion can help students remember better. And then using the Socratic method, Socrates taught by helping his audience to arrive at their own conclusions by asking meaningful questions. So as an example, when using this method, let's say you're teaching a lesson about FICO scores. It would be helpful to ask the participants, put it back on them. What does FICO mean? How is that determined? What does that mean to you when you hear that word? That sort of helps to embed the teachings as well. And then, of course, we know no sarcasm, but using a sense of humor is really strong in connecting with the youth. We know that students will respond negatively to sarcasm, and they catch on to it very quickly and do not like to be embarrassed. I know this for a fact only because I have 6 kids at home, and 3 of them are young adults. So to communicate with them sometimes takes a special talent. Use yourself as the brunt of jokes. I know here at OISTA, we love to laugh and we love to make fun of ourselves. So using that sense of humor, but making you the center of all of your jokes sort of helps when it comes to adolescent learning. And then, of course, adults learn a little bit differently as we age and grow and develop that frontal lobe in our brain there. We're internally motivated and self-directed. We like to bring life experience and knowledge to our learning experiences. Adults tend to be very goal-oriented, relevancy-oriented as well. It's obviously, if it's relevant to you, you're going to pay more attention and process that information more, as well as practical, and we like to be respected. Everybody wants to belong. Okay, quickly we're going to jump into our introduction to building Native communities. So what is the purpose of our curriculum? We are here to enable community members to realize their traditional values by learning financial skills that will help each person make informed financial decisions for themselves, their family, and their community. And so with this youth curriculum, we love the fact that we built in a lot of activities and sessions into the curriculum that require talking to your elders, you know, pulling them into the loop, if you will, to build that financial foundation. And so we look at this as a learning process, not only for the youth, but for families as well, in hopes that once they learn these practices, that's something they can share with the family, and everybody can improve and build their financial foundations. So in each lesson in our curriculum, we do have traditional practices to teach the new skills. Each session will provide an opportunity to discuss communities' traditional practices, a connection between Native resource and financial management, an introduction to basic financial skills that build on one another in each session, interactive discussion questions, and then skill reinforcement exercises. So teaching in a Native context, we try to show the following: learning, building on what you already know. We do that to build self-confidence, and then of course reinforce traditional values and practices. So with our Building Native Communities training model, we refer to it as BNC. A lot of you are practitioners out there already with our Financial Skills for Families curriculum. But our BNC training model, and this is applicable to our youth curriculum as well, we will offer national trainings. We're going to definitely try to get in at least one per year. It's always funding specific. We'd love to have up to 3. And so we're going to keep on writing for funding for that. But we do certify our instructors during our national Train the Trainer events. The BNC instructors, once they pass the certification exam, they can deliver the curriculum in their own tribal communities. We know for a fact that the Building Native Communities can be blended with other curricula, whether that be, you know, our individual development accounts curriculum, or our volunteer income tax assistance, our Building Native Communities financial coaching, our Building Native Communities financial skills for families, as well as other curriculum out there from amazing nonprofit organizations like our partner First Nations Development Institute. They have an amazing curriculum called the Business of Indian Ag. So there's a lot of different curriculum and programs out there that this Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults fits very well with, if you will. Just talking about some of our Building Native Communities program successes. Again, we do have Train the Trainer sessions held nationwide, whether that be our Building Native Communities Financial Skills for Families, our Building Native Communities Financial Coaching, and now our Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for the Youth. Right now, we have over 1,850 certified trainers and instructors, and that is on our Building Native Communities Financial Skills for Families. We actually did just conduct our first national Train the Trainer on the Building Native Communities youth curriculum, and we now have our first round of certified trainers out there, and there's 34 folks representing, I think we had 19 different tribal nations, and we couldn't be more grateful. And I feel like we have the best out there as it stands with these 34 certified practitioners. We have the potential to reach over 25,000 tribal members, and we've already distributed well over 18,000 curriculum books on our Building Native Communities suite of resources, and that's not counting the rollout of our youth curriculum that will happen in early January. You will have access to those books. Okay, so with our Building Native Communities youth curriculum, we have 7 different lessons that we cover in this curriculum. And lesson 1 is Building Thriving Economies. Lesson 2, Money and Native Culture. Lesson 3, Banking 101, check it out. We have lesson 4, Credit Journey, Thriving, Not Surviving. Lesson 5, Credit and Loans, Oh My. Lesson number 6, Home is Where the Heart Is, Ultimate Adulting. Lesson 7, The Circle of Life, or Financial Milestones. And then we have our extra credit supplement, which is on college readiness and student loans. And then our final extra credit supplement, which is per capita payments, which we'll talk a little bit about. Embedded in our youth curriculum, you're going to see money boxes throughout, if you will. This is going to help the participant sort of guide them through the curriculum, giving helpful hints and tips. So we have our money maneuvers, which are exercises designed to get the mind moving and to build their the youth's money muscles, if you will. We have our money wisdom, which are quick tips and valuable information to build that financial knowledge base. We have our money math embedded throughout the curriculum that provides examples of calculations to apply those financial concepts to real life situations. And so coming on down here, we also, in our money boxes, we have our money talk, which is our oral tradition homework assignments that guide conversations with the youth, their family members, and community elders in a way that will build and strengthen their cultural and family connections. We have money tools, which are worksheets and trackers to provide an opportunity to evaluate your own financial reality and to help plan for your financial future. We also have our money extensions in there, which are homework assignments expanding on the subject matter covered in each lesson. So I hope you find that helpful, and we just wanted to provide some context to our new curriculum. So here's just an example of some money math that we have embedded in the curriculum. This is talking about calculating wages. So we pose an example of what Martha working a part-time job after school. How much would she earn last month gross before taxes were taken out? Just to kind of give you an idea. And for all you math nerds out there, it's $1,840. I don't know if you're all running the numbers, but that's what it is. We do have a trainers portal available to certified trainers once they complete the Train the Trainer event. So what that will provide is your certification. Once you complete a Building Native Communities training, you are certified for 5 years to teach on that curriculum in your community. And our job here at OWISTA is to make sure that you have all the tools available when you're going out to do the training. We like to say, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's already happened. So our job is to try to make it easier for you. So what we provide are just some sample templated PowerPoints that you can build into or work off of by using your own organization's logos and brand, whatever you have there. Throughout the curriculum, we have different exercises built in there. And so we provide those templates as separate PDF documents that you could just print out maybe before you're preparing for a lesson. We'll have sample agendas built in there. So you don't have to reinvent that as well, but you can definitely tweak them and plug in your own information. And then we'll provide tools and resources to you once you're certified. So you'll have access to all the Train the Trainer materials and then some to make sure that you're successful once you're certified. All right, just want to talk a little bit about the importance of financial education. So financial education is significant. I grew up on my reservation in Rosebud, South Dakota, and learned all of my lessons the hard way by making mistakes. And so our hopes are with this generation, our 7th generation, we can provide them with the tools at the high school, middle school level before they venture out and really help them solidify and build that financial foundation. So what do we know about the significance of financial education? It helps build skills to save, invest, and grow resources. It improves access to affordable financial products and services, promotes understanding and value of credit, helps consumers avoid predatory lending, grows community assets and stimulates local Native economies, and then of course it strengthens sovereignty. Now, when it comes to tangible benefits of financial education, we look at that as self-sufficiency, the ability to maximize income, savings, and assets, small business startup financing. And we're seeing this happen more and more often across Indian country, small businesses, small Native-owned businesses. It's really exciting to see these local economies happening in our tribal communities. And it's all because of a lot of the practitioners on the call today. You guys are doing the work and it's working in small steps. I know you can't, it's impossible to build something overnight, but that first step of a journey of 1,000 miles, it just begins with that little baby step. Even if it's a tiptoe, you can make magical things happen. Other tangible benefits, of course, home ownership. This is huge. And I know growing up on my reservation, my parents owned their own home, which was a Sioux 400. And if we didn't have that foundation, that stability. I always have a place to go home to. I truly feel I would not be working for an amazing organization like OESTA today. It provides access to affordable loans, and that's another thing that we're, when it comes to our tribal community members, we want to make sure that they're not taken advantage of or going to predatory lenders and paying an obscene amount of money in interest. Tangible benefits, wealth accumulation, and that can be through home ownership, that can be through building assets, that could be starting a small business. It helps our people manage family budgets, and then of course grow community assets through our local tribal economies. So we're going to take a jump into lesson number 1, building thriving Native economies. And again, guys, we're just going to take a kind of a deep dive at a high level. I'm giving you some examples of what's in the new curriculum in hopes that you'll be able to join us for the next National Train the Trainer event. So lesson 1, we talk about money as a tool for empowerment. This session provides an opportunity for participants to discuss the traditional resource management practices in our communities, evaluate the economic dynamics in our communities, identify actions to build a healthier local economy. We talked to, when we rolled this curriculum out initially, we did a pilot training with our Navajo Nation students down in Gallup Central High School. And the big thing that came out from them when we talked about how do you build a healthier local economy, and they all agreed that it's starting businesses, but starting Native controlled businesses to not only build that local economy, but to really start building their family foundations as well. And that was really exciting to hear that they were on that exact same page. In this lesson, you'll learn about the influence advertising has over our spending habits. And then we talk about becoming more educated consumers. So again, when we talk about our local economy, we talk about this in the context of how much do you support your local economy. When you look at your non-community economy, you might have, be in a tribal community that's next to an urban area. So maybe you have a Walmart in your non-community. In your community, maybe you have a tribal casino of some sort. And then we talk about individuals. So we list privately owned businesses in this circle, and we really just like to flesh out what exists in our local economy. Are they mostly non-community members? Are they community members? Are they individuals? Are they tribal members? Which is a really fun activity to go through in your own communities. And lesson number 1, we talk a lot about persuasion tactics, or common advertising strategies that happen when you're out there and shopping. You've got reciprocity, where they'll give you a free gift or a special discount. It kind of makes your mind think that this makes sense to make the purchase. Of course, you have the benefits. They tell you all about all the benefits, source credibility, scarcity, creating a false sense of urgency that it's a limited time. We only have 6 left. And then, of course, social consensus, leading you to believe that everyone is doing it. I like to watch the home shopping channels and this persuasion tactics. I think they nail every single one of them on every little episode they do. I find that interesting. Okay, so lesson number 2, we talk about money in Native culture. And when we talk about that, we like to focus on developing a spending plan. This session provides an opportunity for participants to connect the Native resource management skills with financial budgeting skills, understand values and how it correlates with our relationship with money. We go through a process where we identify wants versus needs. We make sure that we're aware of the flow of money through our household. And I know even as an adult, until we really worked through this curriculum, looking at the flow of money through the household was something I hadn't done in a really long time. And it allows you to take control of that flow of money once you realize through your budget you laid out that you're spending an obscene amount of money at Starbucks 3 times a week. It really allows you to kind of take control of that flow and make sure you're building wealth and not just, having 56 grams of sugar per day. And then, of course, we talk about developing a financial record-keeping system. In this particular lesson, we take a deep dive into different types of savings, whether you have a short-term goal, You put money in an account, maybe it's a savings account, maybe it's under the mattress, however you decide to save your money. We look at those short-term goals, we talk about short-term goals, really take a deep dive into that so our young people can understand the importance of savings to a spending plan. And of course, if we want to save that money, we have to consider our wants and needs first. Then of course, we talk about our long-term goals. Is that investing or setting aside a certain amount of money for a larger purchase? And what tends to come up with long-term goals when you engage with the youth, you know, they might talk about buying a car down the road. And even a little bit further down the road, they might talk about buying a home, building that foundation for their own families. We do talk about emergency reserve funds, or putting money into an account to leave it there until there is an emergency. When there's an emergency, so then you just tap into your emergency reserve fund. Maybe you've invested it into a savings account and you're earning a small amount of interest on that, rather than going to predatory lenders who charge an arm and leg in interest. So in lesson number 2, we also talk about the TAT system. In TATs, we define as tracking, assessing, taking action, and saving. Just kind of taking a dive into that. Step 1, tracking. It makes you aware again of the flow of money in and out of your household, which is really interesting and quite eye-opening for a lot of folks to go to. Step number 2, we assess. So we lay everything out there, and then we ask ourselves, how can we reduce these expenses, which can be placed into 2 separate categories, fixed or flexible. Obviously, a fixed expense, you may not have wiggle room in there, but what are those flexible expenses, and how can I reduce and save money to accomplish my short, long-term goal, or even build that emergency reserve fund? Step number 3, we talk about taking action. So by tracking your monthly spending, you can make those adjustments along the way. So again, when I went through this process not that long ago, I really realized I have a thing for Starbucks, and was able to take some action, not only by hopefully getting out of pre-diabetic range, by not ingesting so much sugar, but I'm going to save a considerable amount of money, considering I spend $6 on a drink 3 times a week. Okay. Then we move on to step 4. We talk about saving, which is the most important part of a savings plan or a spending plan, if you ask me. So how do we pull out those flexible expenses so we can save money on a monthly basis? All right. So going into lesson number 3, we talk about banking 101. Check it out. Of course, we're talking about checking and savings accounts with this particular lesson. In fact, it provides an opportunity for participants to learn about traditional resource management. They learn about checking and savings accounts, the different types of checking and savings accounts, which, you know, if you live in an urban area, a lot of checking accounts you can actually get with little promotions involved. So we talk a little bit about that. Of course, if you're in a rural area, you might not even have a bank to go to in your tribal community, or just one option. So that really comes along with our different communities, but checking and savings is very important. We talk about identify different forms of and learn to prevent identity theft. And so we see this identity theft happening time and time again, and even more so with the flow of technology. And you know, we just have so much money resources at our fingertips. So that's something we take a deep dive into. We also discuss resource and money management. And we like to put that in context about when you eat fish, immediately there's your cash, right? You've been sustained, that's your cash. But if you take the fish and instead of eating it immediately, you dry it, you preserve it, that's savings for down the road. Maybe you get through the winter in that regard. So we talk a lot about that as well. Okay, so in lesson number 3, we talk a lot about balancing your checkbook, whether that is through a check registry, whether that's through the online tools that all banks pretty much provide now, or whether it's a balance of both of them. It's very important to balance your checkbook, and so we really want to hit home to our youth in regards to that. And again, it depends on whether you're using a check register. I know a lot of us don't use these per se anymore, But you would be amazed how important it is to just run the math when it comes to either using a check register or, again, you're balancing online. It's important to make sure you know how much money's in there so you're not incurring those crazy non-sufficient fund or overdraft fees that exist with most banks. So in lesson number 3, we take a deep dive into identity theft. If you'll see our little cartoon here, this was drawn by Ricardo Cate. He is a Laguna Pueblo, is he Laguna Pueblo? Down in the Southwest, but he is an amazing artist. So, you know, we talk about identity theft here, and you'll see the little cartoon he drew. This is hugely important, and this is one of the things we see time and time again. People get their identities stolen. They could use your name and address, your credit cards, bank account numbers, social security numbers, even medical insurance account numbers. So we talk a lot about identity theft and how to prevent that type of thing from happening. And then, of course, forgery. You know, that's something that comes up as well. And so we have activities built into the curriculum when we talk about forgery and discuss different ways to protect yourself from that. Going into lesson number 4, credit journey, thriving, not surviving. This is actually one of my favorite lessons in the entire curriculum because it talks about understanding credit and your credit report. This is hugely important. So it gives our participants an opportunity to go talk about the purpose and importance of credit, understanding credit and your credit report, addressing any credit issues or credit errors that may report on your credit report that you weren't even aware of. And then, of course, building, maintaining, and or rebuilding your credit. In this particular lesson, we talk about the subsistence versus the market economy. And so, you know, we think about how our ancestors lived hundreds and thousands of years ago. We provided all of our own needs, whether you lived on the West Pacific area, whether you were in the Great Plains, you know, or whether you grew up in the upper east side of our country. Our people provided for their own needs by hunting, gathering, farming, you name it, and we were able to provide that. But now we live in a market economy where the majority of goods and services have to be purchased from others. And sometimes those even come from overseas. So we talk a lot about that. We have the students take kind of a deep dive into what goods and services did their particular community provide in a subsistence market, but now that it's changed, where are they getting their goods from? All right. In this particular lesson, credit journey, we talk about different types of credit, whether it's a revolving credit, installment credit, or non-installment credit. We talk a lot about the credit report, and then, of course, the website to go to if you want to pull a credit report for yourself. This is annualcreditreport.com is a federally mandated website that does allow every consumer to pull their own credit report. You can pull each bureau through annualcreditreport.com one time per year. And so the rule of thumb is you do have to pull them separately, which is there's 3, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So we like to talk to our participants about maybe pulling TransUnion in January, and then you wait 4 months and pull Experian maybe in April, and then wait 4 months and pull Equifax. So you're kind of seeing a full picture of your credit throughout the year. We do have a lot of folks that like to use creditkarma.com as a way to check their credit score. It is a Vantage credit score that they're checking rather than a FICO score. But we did put that on there because we do have a lot of folks that like to use Credit Karma, and they feel like that really keeps them on track and on top of their credit. FICO score, that's one thing that a lot of our youth do not understand what it is and how it's calculated. And so this is something we like to take a deep dive into. We do have some activities built around the FICO score. And as you can see here in the chart, we don't have the exact algorithm that they use to calculate FICOs, but this is about what it breaks down to, is what they'll tell us. About 35% of our FICO scores based on our payment history, 30% is on our current debt load, how much debt we carry versus our actual buying power in debt, if you will. 15% length of history, so how long you've been borrowing. If you've got a long credit file, that's going to help your credit score. 10% is weighed on different types of credit, whether that's revolving or installment, auto loans, and whatnot, and then 10% would be applications. We like to talk about building a strong credit history and the tips to start doing that. Start building your credit early, whether that's getting a secured credit card through your local banking institution, getting a job, opening that checking and savings account, maybe getting added as an authorized user if your parents have good credit, to start building that way, and then of course practicing good credit habits. Session number 5, we take a deep dive into credit and loans. Oh my. When we talk about credit, we talk a lot about using credit. And so this session provides an opportunity for folks to learn about the lending process, understand the 5 C's of credit, planning and completing a strong loan application, and then understanding loan rates, terms, and fees. And then we talk a lot too, again, taking this back to our traditional resource management practices. We talk about adopting new ideas to benefit the community. And so we pose this question to our groups. We talk about how we bought and sold goods, bartered for supplies, and purchased necessities on credit, even 100 years ago. So what goods and services did your particular community purchase on credit as well? That's a good way to get the group really engaged. We talk about applying for a loan and the loan application process, how that works, the expectations, and the actual process of that. So we like to go through the applying for a loan. We talk a lot about the assessing the 5 C's of credit. If you'll see here on this slide, there's an illustration completed by a student of Mr. Arnold Blum. He is an amazing financial literacy teacher over at Gallup Central High School in Gallup, New Mexico. We absolutely adore this educator. But if you'll see here, he had the students write out character, capacity, capital, conditions, and collateral, and each finger represented one of the 5 C's, and they drew pictures on how they could remember that. So again, thinking back to how adolescents learn, this was Arnold's way of kind of illustrating to the kids on different practices on assessing and remembering the 5 C's of credit. On the 5 C's, we talk about character, which is, ties into your credit report, your checking and savings accounts, your length of current residency, and then non-traditional credit if maybe you haven't built up a lot of credit at that point. We talk a lot about capacity, or the amount a borrower can afford to pay. To determine that capacity, we take the current income and then all of the expenses that the participant goes through. And so include it in the debt formula. So we take the total debt, divide that by total income, which gives us a debt to income ratio. Included in that debt would be like mortgage or rental payments, minimum credit card payments, car loans, student loans, alimony or child support payments, and any other loans you have. And then of course, when it comes to income, we use gross income, we might use per cap payments, Social Security benefits, any income that the borrower has that we can use to determine their capacity. We talk about capital, which is the items of value that are liquid to repay the loan. So if you're going to buy a home, the home itself will secure that loan. So, if you were to go into foreclosure, then that's something the bank could actually come back and take back. And so capital, you look at how much money you plan to invest in the purchase as well. And then collateral, committing an item of value to guarantee repayment of the loan. I think I just used that housing example there, but that would be the collateral on the property. If you're unable to pay, then the lender has the option to take ownership of the item back as repayment. We go into conditions, or anything that may affect the applicant's ability to repay the loan. Part of conditions would be looking at consistency of employment and length, and things like that. We do take a deep dive into using credit wisely. Obviously, you want to make your credit card payments on time. Credit isn't a substitute for income. We talk a lot about that. Avoiding using credit cards if you're already in financial trouble. Not getting hooked on the minimum payments, not running up the balances, avoiding special services, programs and goods that credit offer. and then of course not maxing out the cards. Lesson number 6, home is where the heart is, ultimate adulting. We really take a deep dive in this particular lesson about being a smart consumer. This session provides an opportunity for participants to discuss learning about assets, the importance of insurance, protecting those assets, if you will, the pros and cons of renting, and then preparing for home ownership. When we talk about building that foundation for home ownership, we talk a lot about control over the property, where you have the say-so in most cases, of course, unless you're in a HOA or a homeowners association type of property. But being a homeowner provides stability and family foundation building. There's appreciation benefits, tax benefits, mortgage costs. You know, they typically stay the same. Your principal and interest payment will be usually locked into a note rate. Of course, your taxes, your property taxes, and your homeowner's insurance could change. But typically, mortgage costs stay relatively the same. And one thing we do know is that rents can rise. And we live out in the Denver, Colorado market, and we actually went through this whole rental industry rising at a crazy rate about 2-3 years ago, where a lot of people couldn't afford to rent anymore and went into home ownership because rental prices were just so high. And then, of course, it creates subconscious savings and then wealth building. We do take a deep dive into different types of insurance, whether it's health, auto, homeowners, renters, disability, and life. We like to make sure that we're encompassing all the different types of life insurance so our young folks understand that. We take a dive into difference between term and cash value insurance. And you'll see one of our little money talks there. And then going into session 7, the circle of life are our financial milestones. Again, it all ties into being a smart consumer. In this particular session, we talk about what it means to live wholeheartedly. We talk about financial systems before European contact, benefiting from your local community development financial institution or CDFIs, tips for being a savvy consumer, and then returning to the circle of life, financial goals now and in the future. And so when it comes to financial systems before European contact, you know, we interacted with other tribes and nations over great distances. Financial systems now in today's world, you know, they come in many different ways, whether you're looking at a banking institution, which is a depository institution, whether you're talking about a credit union or a savings and loan organization. And then of course you have your non-depository institutions like finance companies, payday loan companies, CDFIs or community development financial institutions, and then some tribes have tribal credit departments. We talk a lot about being a savvy consumer and really understanding the different types of organizations that exist, whether it's a credit union, loan fund, finance company, CDFI, which institution fits me best, and to how do you do that? How do you become a savvy consumer? We talk about research, we talk about calculating affordability, payment options, and then of course negotiation. Again, here we have a cartoon that was this illustration completed by Ricardo Cate on payday lending. It says, you can do business with a coyote, but remember, he is a trickster. He's got his masks on there. And we talk a lot about payday lending and give examples of a payday loan in the curriculum, which really illustrates the excessive interest rates, the unnecessary charges, very questionable terms. We really want to make sure that our young folks have a complete understanding of predatory lending and what that means. We're not saying those are bad businesses. We just want to make sure that they're educated to make the right decision when it comes to lending opportunities. So we talk about loan APRs or annual percentage rates. So if you look at a home loan, a typical APR might be anywhere between 3 to 8%, student loans 4 to 7%, auto loans, 4 to 14% on average. Consumer loans, whether it's from a bank, a credit union, we did put CDFI on there to be fair, but I will say most CDFIs, depending on the loan product, you can actually get for a much less APR. And then of course, credit cards, you're going to see anywhere from 14 to 25% or beyond, depending on the state that the credit card companies are set up in. Some states like South Dakota, where I grew up, there is no cap on APRs, and you can see them as high as, oh gosh, I think I've seen one at 34.9%. Absolutely crazy. And then of course, payday loans, a typical average annual percentage rate is going to be about 400%. And we really want our youth and young folks to understand that. We talk a lot about buying a car, making that right choice. So starting off, step one is to assess your needs, determine your budget, do your proper research, get pre-approved, shop for vehicles. And if you're not willing to or wanting to negotiate, if you're anything like me, I feel like that's confrontational. Bring somebody with you that has the ability to negotiate for you. And then of course, purchasing that vehicle. Okay, so in lesson number 7, we talk a lot about circle of life, the checklist. When you're a child and a teen, in that stage, you're really in that learning process. As we become young adults, we look at our financial circle of life. We hope that we're growing into the saving realm. As we get into our middle age, or we circle back into that time in our lives, we hope we're growing our assets. And then, of course, as we're elders in our living in that time, we would be enjoying our financial circle of life. Okay, now we have our extra credit supplement, our college readiness and student loans section. In this particular section, we talk a lot about the college investment, which is the total cost of tuition and fees, your time and effort to earn a degree, which equals your future earnings and quality of life. And then we just kind of give some averages of published yearly tuition and fees, depending on if you're going to a public 2-year community college, 4-year, or a private 4-year college. The costs definitely vary. We talk about the different types of college institutions, whether it's a college, a university, community college, or for-profit colleges. And we really want to make sure that our youth understand the differences there. We talk about identifying and bringing in partners when it comes to making that step for college readiness, whether it's a tribal enterprise, a tribal college, a state banking department. We talk about, guidance counselors. From a high level, if you're the actual learning institution, it's good to bring in these partners to sort of help guide your youth. But from the youth level, your partners you'd want to bring in, of course, your parents, your guidance counselors, your peers. Maybe, you have a friend a little bit older than you that has gone to a college, and there's different ways to identify those partners depending on what shoes you're walking in. We talk a lot about types of student loans, whether it's a direct subsidized loan, a direct unsubsidized loan, or direct plus loans. We want to make sure that students understand that difference. I know when I raced off to college, I did not know a single thing about any of those. Is college affordable? So we do have an activity built into our curriculum where you can calculate the costs of going to college, depending on which school you're going to. You can also determine your unmet need, what financial resources you have available, and if you have any unmet need there. Okay, and then our final supplement in the curriculum, our extra credit, is our managing per capita and lump sum payments. This is something that some of our tribal youth do experience when it comes to receiving the per capita. So we talk about the different payment structures, the different payment options. Every tribe is a little bit different. We have an exercise in the curriculum about identifying assets. Can it increase in value? Do you consider this an asset? We have the participants create an action plan, if you will, if they receive per cap, or maybe they're receiving a lump sum, maybe they're receiving an inheritance, but you can actually create an action plan through this supplement. And there's just another kind of a timeline written out there. Okay. And so now we want to take just a moment to talk a little bit about Freddie Mac again, how they're making homes possible. If you all have any more questions or information, you can actually go to their website directly at freddiemac.com. But we want to open up this space for Miss Carla Thompson just to talk a little bit about Freddie. and their products and the Duty to Serve initiative that they're working on. Hi, welcome, Carla.
Carla, if you're still on, you may be on mute. You just want to make sure, because I know Carla had some problems earlier with the platform and she got kicked out and tried to get back on with audio, Tawny.
Oh, okay.
So not certain if she had the issue happen again.
Okay.
Just want to give her a few seconds, but if not, I lament that maybe she wasn't able to get back on the platform.
Okay.
Lucky for me, I had no issues today.
Oh, absolutely. And I know Carla is doing a lot of work with different tribal nations across the country, and she's a strong part of the South Dakota Home Coalition initiative that is happening out there. Freddie Mac is really trying to help untangle the hurdles we have when it comes to homeownership in Native country. And so, again, if you guys have any more questions about it, please feel free to go to freddiemac.com and their website. You can always reach out to Team Owista directly, and we can make sure and get those. Any questions that you have, any detailed questions, we can get those over to Maheen and Carla to get a direct answer if you have any pressing questions. So
Thank you, Tawny. And I just wanted to say that Carla just messaged me that she was wondering if we could hear her. So I guess she's having a problem.
okay.
Apologies on behalf of Freddie Mac. But I know that Carla wanted to mention at a high level some of the recent or existing affordable lending products, or otherwise the different products that we have. And I know there's the renovation product, there's our energy efficiency related green choice mortgage, and there's in the manufacturer housing area, we have choice homes. So I'm not the expert on that, but certainly through Tawny and team, if anybody has questions for the Duty to Serve team in Freddie Mac single family, we'd be happy to get those questions over to Carla and get back to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Maheen. We sure appreciate that.
You're
All
welcome.
right. So I just wanted to show you all a quick map of all of our CDFIs across the country. CDFIs work to provide affordable, responsible credit, create and sustain jobs, and to stabilize our communities. And so one of the best terms I ever heard described was financing with heart. And so if any of you are on and are wondering, do I have a local Native CDFI or a regional or maybe even a national CDFI that I can tap into, please go to www.ofn.org/CDFI-locator, and you'll be able to pull up all the Native CDFIs that do exist. And actually, we're working on pulling that onto our website as well, creating an interactive map. All right, guys, we're at time, but we did want to talk a little bit about the workbooks. To order our new Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults, please reach out to Owista here in January of 2020. We are going to have them available. We do ask that you attend one of our national Train the Trainer events before you really dig in and start teaching on the curriculum. But we do want you all to know that there will be PDF versions available for free at owista.org. And then we just hope that you can work towards getting into a national training so you make sure and have all the tips, tools, and resources available to get into that. Once you're certified, you get access to our online trainers portal, and you'll have everything available at your fingertips. Along with our workbook, we do have a financial journal that was developed. That's an amazing kind of journal to go through with the young folks. That is priced at $9.50. You can actually order those on our website as well, or you can contact Steph directly at stephanie@owista.org. These journals are provided at cost plus shipping. So that's how much they cost to print out and then ship directly to you. And the webinar crowd, I can see you guys. You're going wild out there. I see you. Okay, so we wanted to open up some time for questions and answers, and I know we're at 1:04. We definitely respect your time, but if anybody has any questions that we can answer, please go ahead and type those into your chat box, and we will go ahead and stay on the line to answer any questions. I know Steph, our guru, our tech guru, has been working diligently behind the scenes to make sure that Your feedback has been getting noted, and she may have been responding to you directly already. But any questions and answers? Or any questions and we'll get you answers.
So we did have a few early on. The first is, does Native American include Native Hawaiian, Guam, and U.S. territories?
Very good question. Yes, yes. Our Native Hawaiians, I feel like, are some of our more invisible folks that tend to get overlooked. But yes, this curriculum was developed for all Indigenous people, knowing that Hawaii has a different, the way their trust lands are set up and all of the hurdles that they deal with. This curriculum was developed again for all Native folks across the country, Indigenous people. That really want to work on a curriculum that has that cultural context involved. So great question. And of course, our Alaska Natives are included in the curriculum as well. This was, again, written for everybody that's doing work in Indigenous country, and there's so many of us. So thank you for that. It was a great question.
And next is, can youth become certified trainers?
Ooh, I love this question. I love this question. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we would love to get some of our youth into our next national training. As long as you pass that certification exam, we do a teach back in our Train the Trainer event where you actually get up in front of everybody and do a teach back on a lesson. But once you're certified, you are able to teach on this curriculum. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the cover of our curriculum, we have all Native youth are on there. We have a couple Lakotas, a couple Tlinkits, a Northern Cheyenne young man, and some of the older girls have expressed interest in training on the curriculum, so they can help not only build their own financial literacy, but help others in their communities. So thank you so much for asking that. That would be amazing. That's something we've been hoping for. So youth, yeah, once we open up our registration, we would love to hear from you and see if you can make it. And this is something you can start working towards. Absolutely.
The next question is, how much is your Train the Trainer session and how long is it?
Ooh, great question. Great question.
Bring to Hawaii.
Okay, so this is a Hawaii question. Okay, so Steph, I'm thinking back to our Denver National Training. It was a 2.5-day event. We very well could make it a much longer training, but out of respect for all of your time and time away from home and work, we are keeping it at 2.5 days. We do have a training coming up in Boulder on March 3rd through the 5th. Steph, do you remember offhand if there's a small materials and meals fee associated with that one?
I believe there's not.
Okay, yes. So that's a great question, and thank you so much for asking that. Typically, OWISTA's trainings have been registration free, if you will. There was no fee for registration. We will start implementing a small material and meals cost to some of our trainings. And that just helps offset the food that we provide. And then it actually really helps get folks in that space that are really engaged and want to attend those trainings. So more to come on that. That's an absolutely great question. If we do ever have a meals and material cost, it would be pretty minimal. And so, I would say probably $250 would be something for a 2.5-day training if there's a cost involved. So thank you so much for asking that, and more to come. We do have a training events a training events schedule on our website, and you can get more information on if there's any meals and materials fees on there. So yeah, thank you for that.
Next question is, if we are already certified OWISTA trainers, do we need to retake the teen and young adults program?
Ooh, fantastic question. Yes. Yes, you would. Now, what you'll find when you come to one of our youth trainings is that it is very similar to our Building Native Communities Financial Skills for Families curriculum. In fact, when we were blessed enough to get this funding from Freddie Mac, that's how we set this up, because we know our Financial Skills for Families curriculum works. but we just had to make a lot of tweaks and whatnot to make sure that it engages the youth as well. So we built in more activities, we built in more resources, there's intergenerational homework attached, you know, there's more money math involved. And so great question. Yes, we would ask that if you wanted to focus on the youth curriculum, that you would come to a national train the trainer and get certified. So thank you for asking that.
Next is, could you explain the difference between FICO and Advantage?
Ooh, absolutely. So a FICO score is going to be your fair, Isaac, oh gosh, I'm so sorry guys, I don't have that directly in front of me, but a FICO score basically is developed through our 3 credit bureaus, which is TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, okay? So when you go in to buy a home per se, or you go in to buy a car, that lender is going to pull an actual FICO score, okay? And so it is a little bit different. And typically, so each bureau will have a FICO score individually, and typically a lender will take the middle of the 3 scores to use as your FICO. So let's say you've got a 630 with TransUnion, a 655 with Experian, and a 669 with the other one. They would take that middle one of 655 to use as your actual score. So that's a really good question. Advantage score is a little bit different. The way that is calculated is not done by the 3 bureaus. So typically with Advantage score, it tends to come in a little bit higher, if you will. But I challenge you all to go into Google and just type FICO versus Vantage, because I guarantee you're going to get a more articulate answer. But Advantage does not affect your credit per se. So if you check your Vantage score, let's say on an app like creditkarma.com, it's not going to hit your credit with an inquiry. So it's more of like a soft pull of your credit, but sometimes they come in higher. And I've seen that happen. I used to be a licensed mortgage broker for 10 years. Folks would, you know, well, this score, I pulled this score and it said this, where they might have been looking at a Vantage score, and a FICO score typically is an actual lender will use to pull the credit. So great question, but I type in FICO versus Vantage, and they're going to give you all of the specifics.
And Tani, if I may jump in real quick, this is Maheen, and that was really helpful. Also so the 3 bureaus a number of years ago, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion actually came together and created the Vantage score as kind of like a separate entity, which competes with the FICO score, right? The one that Tani's talking about, which, like Tani said, the FICO is the kind of major score that's used for mortgages and certain other type of lending. And I think Vantage score has been kind of picking up in recent years in terms of usage. But like Tani's saying, what's interesting is I've pulled my credit score from Credit Karma, from NerdWallet, and from some of the other free apps. And then I've also pulled it from my bank app. So you know how sometimes your bank might offer you a free FICO score. So I have my credit card with a certain banking institution, and I'm able to see my FICO score. So not to complicate matters too much, but there are even different models of FICO scores and Vantage scores. So I'm only able to see one particular model of my FICO score free from my banking app, but at least it helps me to see it. And then when I, like, the same day looked at my Credit Karma, my NerdWallet, or some of those other scores were Vantage scores, and they were educational Vantage scores to complicate matters further. And they definitely, there was a huge difference between the scores sometimes, depending on which day I pulled them. So I definitely think they can be helpful apps. They're free, like Tani is saying, but just kind of, you know, they can help you kind of get a feel for what are the factors that are being taken into consideration, and maybe seeing your trend. Because if you're working on improving your credit, maybe over the course of 3 to 6 months, etc., you may see an upward trend, and you may be like, hey, thumbs up, I'm in the right direction. But definitely take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because the FICO and the Vantage are not equivalent.
Oh, fantastic, Maheen. Thank you so much for jumping in there. That was extremely helpful.
Anytime.
All right, Steph, any other questions that we have?
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you all so much for typing into the chat box with all your questions. Another question is, some states already have financial literacy curriculum for high school youth and they have it noted in their high school diploma. How does this curriculum fit into the high school curriculum, or does it?
That's a wonderful question. And we are seeing states across the country making strides when it comes to financial literacy. But we actually pulled up a study, and that was done in 2016. And in 2016, there were only 5 states across the United States that required personal finance for high school graduation. And in 2016, that was Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, Utah, and Virginia. Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, Utah, and Virginia. Now there's a lot of organizations out there, particularly nonprofits, that are really moving that needle, if you will, like Credit Builders Alliance. They're doing amazing work in really getting financial literacy into high schools. But we know that for the majority of our states, it is not a requirement to have financial literacy class taken upon high school graduation, but there are more progressive places that it is happening. So this curriculum was designed in mind. In a perfect world, we would love to have our Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults available at every Bureau of Indian Education school across the country. That's sort of a bigger goal of ours, and that we're working towards that. But as it stands right now, financial literacy typically isn't a requirement. Some of them will build that into maybe their economics class. They'll touch on different topics in financial literacy. But as we know, Algebra 2 is still a requirement in most high schools where financial literacy is not. So we're really hoping this curriculum helps move the dial in that direction. Thank you. That was a good question.
The next question is, does the curriculum address welfare entitlement culture, especially the generational aspect of ex-entitlement culture of Native families?
Oh, that is a really good question. And growing up in Rosebud, being Sichangu Lakota, we grew up in one of the poorest places in the country, and I know where you're coming from when you say that. My dad's on tribal council, and he just has the hardest time with that because our people need help. But when it comes to that entitlement attitude, I know sometimes that's not very helpful, and it's hard to move people forward with that type of mentality. We do not touch on that in the curriculum. And the reason being is, we have 573 tribes across our country. And so we really didn't tap into that, if you will, because there are some tribes out there that are maybe a little bit more progressive. But I think that's something we do talk about poverty mentality in our Train the Trainer event, and we have some handouts on that we can share. But again, building that into the curriculum for all 573 tribes, we just decided that we weren't broaching that subject, if you will. But I know where you're coming from, and again, we do have some resources that we provide to our trainers if that's something they want to build into their training, sort of that poverty mentality and how to break that down. Because I know that for a fact that's something I grew up with. We were always in survival mode, which I didn't understand at the time, but now do. And that really does affect your mentality, even as an adult. It took a long time for me to understand that, process through it, and move forward out of that. So thank you for that question. It's a great question. And unfortunately, that's not something we tackle in detail in this curriculum. All right, Steph, any other questions?
We had a few about the upcoming training, and I typed in the chat box just a little bit of clarification. We have the date set, and we just solidified the location. So details on registration will be out the first week of January. It will be located in Boulder, Colorado. So please save the date, March 3rd through 5th, if you're interested in joining us in Boulder, Colorado for the upcoming Building Native Communities Financial Empowerment for Teens and Young Adults training.
Awesome, my dear. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we got a lot of feedback from you guys saying, because we were thinking of having it in June of 2020, but we have so many folks interested in taking this curriculum before the youth get out for summer so they can start working with them that we had to bump it up. So thank you to Steph for pulling that all together and securing a location, and it will be in the beautiful, amazing Boulder, Colorado area. If you've never been, that's someplace you probably should visit. And more to come on that, like Steph said. You'll want to check on our site, owista.org, at the start of the new year, and we'll have all of that information available to you all. All right. I think we've got all the questions answered, but just know, guys, that we're here for you. So if we weren't able to get to your question and provide the right answer for you, always feel free to reach out to us. Of course, we're going to plug OWISTA. Follow us. Go to owista.org. You can like us on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe to our newsletter. That'll keep you up to date on everything that we roll out on a, as soon as it hits the industry, if you will. One thing about this youth training I've realized with the Denver, it filled up so fast. So just go into our website, owista.org, sign up for our newsletter, and then you'll get all those email blasts that tell you when the next date is, when to register, where it's at, and all of that good information. And then, of course, you can always contact Steph and I here at OWISTA. Again, my name is Tawny Wilson, and there's my email, tawny@owista.org, and then you have Miss Stephanie at stephanie@owista.org. You can give us a call, whatever's more convenient for you, but we're always here to answer any questions, and if we don't have the answers, we'll get you pointed in the right direction. And other than that, we just wanted to say thank you so much for being a part of this webinar today. If it wasn't for you all working in Indian country, being these change makers, wanting the most for our youth, we wouldn't be here today serving all of you. So from the bottom of our hearts, and different tribal languages, Wopi Latanka and Lakota, thank you very much for being with us today. We wish you an amazing holiday season, and if you need anything from Team OWISTA, just reach out. We're always here. You guys have a great day, and thank you again.
Thank you so much.